This module focuses on aging. As a whole, this module focuses on 3 areas. First, it takes a look at the sociological interests in aging and the life course. Then we look at those sociological theories and some of the different perspectives that they take on aging. And then finally, there is about the last third or half of the text is looking at age inequalities and the consequences of these inequalities. So the recordings that I'm peppering throughout this module will focus on those first 2 topics, and then your text and some written content as well as supplemental content will focus on the third. So age is both a biological and a social classification. When we're talking about age, we're looking at development, physical capabilities and functionings. We're looking at the body's different phases and what that means as far as what we can provide for society and to what extent, right? What levels of maturity we're at. In addition, we're also looking at these social ideas about what these different stages of life and our physicality means as far as our social responsibilities and our social roles. In particular, we use age a lot to determine who is or isn't eligible for any task. You can just fill in a blank. And this sets some ideas for formal and informal norms, right? Norms are our standards of behavior. These are the expectations that we have for individuals in society and how they will behave. And when it comes to formal norms, these are sort of the written or codified norms, right? These are the standards that usually we see as policies or as rules and regulations and things like that. And so I bet you can think of immediately 1 or 2 of the formal norms in our society that are connected to age. So for example, you might be thinking of legal drinking age, right? Or the age of consent. And it's really interesting when we start looking at the social construct of the formal norms surrounding age. How do we see these norms change over time from place to place or from space to space? And, what kind of rationalization do we use in order to justify our age-related norms? In the past, these things were, I feel like, a bit more globally dynamic when it came to thinking about what age meant what, or meant that you could do what. And nowadays we use a lot of science to back up these classifications, yet and still they're still also rooted in our social understandings and social systems, right? So the idea that you go to school until you're about age 18, or the idea that you're going to start school around the time that you turn 5 years old. Those are still going to be based in, some science, some developmental theory and understanding, but a lot into what our society believes childhood is, and when our society believes you should enter the workforce. The sociologists are really interested in this idea of the life course perspective of age and looking at how our patterns of aging influence the social expectations, right? Those norms and behaviors or roles that are considered to be appropriate. We also focus on how much a society emphasizes certain ages and the values that we place on individuals in their roles, in their statuses at different ages as well. We know that age is definitely a source of inequality at multiple stages, or not just age, but not meeting the expected norms for one's age, right? And of course, this is intersectional as well. And it definitely gets into, those combinations of like race and age and gender and age, or all three, and things like that. And so super interested in looking at, age and aging through this perspective, especially since we do so many things in our lives. We have so many huge milestones that we cross that are connected either directly or indirectly to age, right? Especially when we talk about role exits. So, like leaving a certain status at a certain point in your life. And there are a couple of age based role exits that we experience. So, sociologists are super interested in age and aging when it comes to the study of demographics. Demographics is the study of populations, and in particular, looking at how populations grow or decrease, or how they migrate, but also in looking at aging and how that impacts all of these different transitions that occur. And so, one of the things that we look at is population aging, or the increase in the number or proportion of older people in a population. And your text gives you a lot of background into all the different things that you could learn about population aging, or about a population based on its population aging, right? And you can see in the next section of the module, you'll see some information on the demographic transition, which shows these patterns that we see in modern societies of shifts from having younger populations to older populations, and the reasons why. One thing that's important to point out here is that by 2030, the median age in the United States is predicted to be 42 years of age. So, what does that tell you? Look at the tables and charts that are given, and come to some conclusion about, are we becoming older? Are we aging as a population, or are we decreasing? Right? And how does that compare to the rest of the world?